my God. Y'all know I had mixed feelings about this beef in general, and I did have some issues with this concert that we'll get to, but man, listen, I don't know how you watch Kendrick's Popout event last night and don't come away with a feeling of pride about this hip-hop thing of ours, and how it can bring us together in the most beautiful ways for the absolute pettiest of reasons. One of my favorite paradoxes in music, and especially hip-hop, has always been how the music can speak to our souls and create these moments that have almost nothing to do with what the lyrics are saying. I've always said I think Anti-Up by M.O.P. is the most joyous, life-affirming song I've ever heard, even as the lyrics are about punching people in the face and robbing them. And last night to me was the same thing. I can't think of when I've ever seen a more joyful celebration of life come from an evening dancing on somebody's grave. And I was especially happy, speaking as a New Yorker, I was so happy for the city of Los Angeles that Kendrick was able to give his town such a beautiful night like this. When the show started, I think a lot of us were speculating on who Kendrick might bring out, like is J. Cole gonna come out, is Push gonna come out and do Adidon? But once I saw what he was doing, it made perfect sense to me that he didn't do any of that because he wanted this to be a special night for his city. And from the Black Hippie reunion to all the different shades of LA hip-hop representation to bringing all these gang members together at the end, it just seemed like such a perfect night for Los Angeles that I felt honored to even get to witness and share in. One aspect of this beef that I thought really showed us something about Drake's character is how Drake, of all people, Drake, who we know built so much of his career on these contrived, artificial relationships with different pockets of hip-hop and black culture, that he, of all people, would have the nerve, the audacity to try and work this angle against Kendrick Lamar where he acts like Kendrick isn't really locked in with his own hood, that Kendrick doesn't have deep ties to his own community in LA. Such a delusional angle. Like, why would you even think that that angle is gonna hit? I really feel like Drake got so lucky having Meek Mill be his first opponent in a beef, who was the worst beefer in history. He got so lucky with that he just came away with a delusional sense of what he can get away with in a battle. Because nobody who's familiar with Kendrick Lamar is gonna buy that he's not connected with his community, whether that means gang affiliations or however else you want to take it.
So when you hear these stories in Good Kid, Mad City, when you hear these stories in To Pimp a Butterfly, it's a little bit deeper than just the music. It's cats out here really trying to do something and really trying to spark the idea of positivity in the community. Let me tell my story. Let me tell other stories that's out here that want to do something different, but can't because you're in an environment where you just got to adapt. It brings a whole another side of the world to Compton, to this backyard right here and say, okay, these are actually people.
So yeah, I got a kick out of how thoroughly this concert obliterated that angle that Kendrick doesn't love his city and his city doesn't love him back. But I don't think that's the main reason he put it together this way. I saw a tweet last night from the excellent writer Justin Tinsley, who said, LA lost Nip, then lost Kobe less than a year later. They couldn't even celebrate titles by the Lakers and Dodgers because of the pandemic. That city has been waiting to celebrate for a long time, and Buddy did it ever tonight. I don't think it's a coincidence that the only diss track Kendrick didn't perform was the darkest one of all, Meet the Grams. I really feel like when he sat down to plan this show, he realized that this beef that went to some pretty dark places at the height of it had evolved into something that gave him a once-in-a-lifetime chance to really bring something special to his city at a time when they sorely needed it.
Fuck that, this shit making me emotional, man. Fuck that, we been fucked up since Nipsey died, hold up. We been fucked up since Kobe died, hold up.
He had a chance to build on this foundation that was laid with some lower frequencies and use it to give his Los Angeles a really special night of togetherness and unity and joy, along with some extra servings of pettiness. Another one of my favorite writers, David Dennis, said the Popout concert, especially the ending, was a moment for Kendrick and the entire West Coast to remind us that they are bigger than their tragedies, that they're resilient in their peace, unyielding in their happiness, they're unwavering in their love of the culture, and unabashed in their willingness to dance when joy is at their feet. And that is why the Ken and Friends Popout show last night, to me, not only felt like such a glorious night for Los Angeles and LA hip-hop, it felt like a moment that captured the essence of what hip-hop at its best has always been about. Because that practice of carving out space for your community to come together in times when they really need it is pretty much exactly what gave birth to this whole hip-hop thing more or less 50 years ago.
That's what this shit was about, to bring all of us to motherfucking together, you know what I'm saying?
So there's been a popular conception for many years that hip-hop began in its earliest days as a way for people to speak truth to power and tell the outside world about the conditions they live in. And that is a role that hip-hop has gone on to play over the years very powerfully. It's what Kendrick was talking about in that clip just now. But if you really look into the history, that's not how hip-hop originally started out at all. When hip-hop was first coming into being in the 1970s, it was about giving these people, these black and brown people in the South Bronx, the most invisible, most systematically neglected part of New York City, a way to come together for themselves on their own terms and for their own benefit, regardless of what the outside world thought about it or if they even noticed. The people who put together those first parties and park jams were not thinking about what this jam could communicate to the other side of the world or even the other side of the city. They were thinking about what this jam could do for their community who came to the jam. It was about carving out space for creative community where your people could be seen and heard by each other and for each other. And sure enough, within 10 or 20 years, that creative community that came to be known as hip-hop became so powerful that what used to be the most invisible people in America had the whole world watching. And then the world figured out they could make money from what they were watching. And ever since then, this hip-hop thing has been a lot more complicated. But once in a while, you can still find ways to bring it back to that essence of carving out space and making moments that are for us and by us. And even though Kendrick Lamar's end of this whole beef may have started out as a way for Kendrick to let off his 10 years worth of contempt for that Canadian man, over the course of last night, at least, it transcended that. Through Kendrick's love for his people and his commitment to making sure his art is about something bigger than himself. And even with the surrealism of running back this ruthlessly festive diss track 5 times in a row, what we got in the end was a beautiful and quintessentially hip-hop night in Los Angeles. Even though I didn't think it was a perfect night for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm sorry, but I just don't understand why rapping over vocal tracks is considered acceptable nowadays. This might be the line in the sand where I have to make peace with being washed, but I just don't think rapping over vocal tracks sounds good. And I hope people took notes on the impact of Kendrick's set where he wasn't doing that and some of the opening acts that fell back on that. But more importantly, I just wouldn't feel right if I ignored the layers of meaning that come with having Dr. Dre on stage for the climax of that show. And look, I totally get what that represented with everything Dr. Dre stands for in hip-hop history and LA hip-hop. I get how big it was to have him be the one to introduce Not Like Us, but I just can't pretend I don't remember the other history that Dr. Dre was bringing with him to that stage. And much as I've seen a lot of people come out of this beef holding Kendrick up as this unambiguously heroic defender of women, having the well-documented abuser of women Dr. Dre up on that stage just complicates that narrative. And actually, right when I was finishing this video, one of my all-time favorite LA rappers, Open Mike Eagle, posted his reactions to the concert, and I think he spoke really well to this Dr. Dre elephant in the room.
Part of the whole narrative with Kendrick and Drake has been that Kendrick is trying to expose Drake for being an abuser on a lot of different levels. And I think that bringing out Dr. Dre, at the very least, it muddies that. You could never take away the stuff like the achievements that Dr. Dre has had. But Dr. Dre beat the hell out of a woman in public. She was a music video show host. I used to watch her show when I was little. There was a show called Pump It Up, hosted by D. Barnes. And Dr. Dre beat the hell out of her in public because she said something that he didn't like or something like that. It's just, again, when you get to this level where you are taking on the responsibility of trying to have a moral conversation, you got to be ready to have the conversation. I just wasn't a fan of him bringing out Dr. Dre because it just put me in this mindset of like, okay, what are we doing here?
That's an edit of a much longer monologue, so I recommend checking out the whole thing for yourself. But yeah, I also grew up watching D. Barnes on Pump It Up. But you shouldn't need that connection to it to take that part of the history seriously. And unfortunately, that sort of contradiction, that lack of consistency, is also a long-running hip-hop tradition. Way too often over the years, we've made some groups of people deal with our own version of the same neglect the same invisibility that hip-hop started out trying to be a refuge from. But look, Kendrick's music has always told the story of a work in progress who's trying to find a path. And maybe coming out of all that joy and celebration Kendrick gave us with the Popout, we can all use that glimpse of what hip-hop gives us at its best as inspiration to do better at really consistently making this culture a space where everyone can come together to be seen and heard by each other and for each other. But let me know what you think. What were your favorite parts of the show? What do you think this show meant for hip-hop? And what do you think Drake does now? Can he go to California anymore? Can he eat at California Pizza Kitchen anymore?